Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Colleen Jennings of the Welders.
Good evening. I am pleased to be here to represent Women of Welders 2.0, and I'm going to tell you a little bit about Welders to give you some context. But first, a thought. You're going to meet 4 dynamic, edgy, innovative playwrights tonight, and in some of the pieces, the language will be tough. If you worry about perhaps finding the language inappropriate, we will not be offended if during the time I'm talking to you about the Welders, if you ease out of the auditorium. We want you to be comfortable. So, the Welders is a D.C. Playwrights collective dedicated to creating an alternative platform for new play production. The original Welders are Gwydion Sullivan, Ali Curran, Bob Bartlett, Ronee Carlarco, Jojo Roof, and I. And we launched the Welders in 2013 with the motto, 3 years, 5 plays, pass it on. And what that means is that by August 2016, we will have produced 5 world premieres, and we're going to pass on the entire organization, which means our bank account, website, board, everything to the next generation of Welders, and we've christened them Welders 2.0. So we are thrilled that we have, through an application process, we've selected Welders 2.0, and you're going to see some of their work tonight. They are amazingly talented and represent a really diverse range of skills and artistic visions. To learn more about us, please visit our website at www.thewelders.org. And tonight, I'm going to be representing Welders as they're performing for the Women of Welders. The 4 women members of Welders are going to be presenting work tonight. I'd like to start with Ms. Alexandra Petri, and she says about this work, "I've been consumed with tours as a concept, as a framework for telling stories. I think many people see D.C. as a tourist town, and there are certain stories we tell tourists and certain stories that are invisible. Some histories qualify as the official history, both oral and written, of a given place. And other stories etch themselves invisibly on the same surfaces, but never get carved in marble or memorialized on plaques. There are signs in parks honoring Sonny Bono, George Mason, and Thomas Jefferson, but no signs in the same places saying, this is where we had our first kiss, and this is where she died, and this is where we stopped loving each other." She's been trying to switch the positions of the 2 groups of stories in her work. She says, "This piece is an excerpt from a tour I've been working on. It's taken many forms. Fall bit me pretty hard, and so right now what this is a ghost tour with a twist. By making the audience invisible and giving them time to stare at the unofficial sort of stories, I think this is a step in the right direction."
Hello, ghosts. Welcome to DC. I hope you've been enjoying the rest of Ghost Orientation Week. DC is a great city to spend all or part of eternity in. You were very fortunate to meet your maker here. DC is a great town for ghosts. A few frequently asked questions. Yes, you do have to stay in these clothes. Sorry. No, you can't walk through walls. Yes, cats can see you. Of course, cats can see you. Dogs can't. That's one of the things that takes getting used to. Starbucks will still take your order, but they will get one thing wrong every time. Some of it takes getting used to. Not being able to see your reflection in mirrors, not being able to open doors by yourself, not being able to talk to anyone, not being able to slow the rate at which someone turns the page, not being able to turn the radio down when it's a song you hate or up when it's a song you love. Still, you learn to make do. And there are certain undeniable advantages to slipping off your mortal coil. One of the misconceptions that people have about ghosts is that you get to see other ghosts and interact with your friends and relatives and everyone back to Shakespeare. No. Now, for the first time ever, you are perfectly alone. and none of them can see you. You have nothing to do from here on out but to kill time. Some ghosts go insane. Most find occupations. You can be a ghost in a library and read the internet over the shoulders of people in public terminals. That's another trouble with being a ghost, is finding someone who likes to watch what you like to watch on the internet. The last thing you want to do is be stuck in an apartment with a guy and then it turns out his one great passion is things with tentacles that maybe shouldn't have tentacles, you know? And those guys don't tend to open their doors very much, which means you're stuck there longer than you'd like until the pizza guy shows. You can be a ghost in a library and lurk for days until someone checks out the book you were meaning to read, and then you can follow him home and hope he reads at the same speed you do. Ghost readers have a difficult time of it, but you can manage. I have known ghosts to read Ulysses over grad students' shoulders. Why not? You have time. Most ghosts are theater goers. Theater is much easier than books. All you have to do is get through the door, and then catharsis and 2 hours killed. Ushers, ticket takers at movies, doorkeepers of all kinds, they all have ghost stories to tell. What is there to do at first than what you did when you're alive? And museums. D.C. is rich in museums, mostly free to the living, but even the Spy Museum is free to you. You can sit for hours in front of all the art. You don't have to rush through. You don't have to worry that the exhibit will close. You can finally read all of the explanatory placards. This is heaven. For a while. For some people, it never stops being heaven. You can see inside all the buildings you were curious about, follow the president through a door and see the Oval Office, see the halls of Congress, see the hidden rooms inside cathedrals, and learn where the locked doors under bridges lead. You can ride the subway all the way to the end of the line. You can get off and keep going. You can walk across the whole country and back again if you like. You can learn to appreciate opera. You can follow the ring cycle from city to city. You can sit in on lectures on physics, mathematics, art history, gender studies. You have nothing but time. The world is the desert island on which you have been marooned, but you can bring all the entertainment material you want. But eventually, maybe not for 1,000 years, but eventually you will get bored. And then what? Yes, there are some times you can communicate. In those first moments after a shower, in the condensation on the mirror, you can just barely make your words legible. On Halloween, if properly disguised, you can sometimes make an appearance at a costume party. Can you communicate? Well, I knew one ghost, who was or had been a poet, and he kept trying to make things, would spend hours using all of his strength to rearrange refrigerator magnets in a meaningful sentence, and the homeowner would just bump them all right back into place again. I would not recommend straining yourself like this. Shakespeare's ghost, this doesn't work for everyone, but he actually, there was a woman with a Ouija board, and he managed to explain the situation very patiently, one letter at a time. And the woman who owned the board, she was incredible. She logged hours and hours, spelling out letter by letter this new play he had in mind. The play turned out to be crap, but that kind of cooperation is rare in this skeptical age. And I haven't answered the question you haven't asked, which is, what else is there? Are there opportunities to be Patrick Swayze, if you can get your ectoplasmic hands on the right pottery wheel? No. But there are consolations. You can do everything you think you can, even the bad things. You can follow people home. It can be anyone. You are sitting in a coffee shop and someone catches your interest and you get into his car and you ride back to his house and you follow him in the door and you can even watch him shower. But disgusting. Not approved of, but there are ghosts who do. If only people knew how many ghosts were watching them shower. It's like the iCloud hack didn't even come close to it. Poor Kate Upton. But most ghosts get sick of that eventually. There is only limited drama in a locker room. The living are the best soap opera. And that is probably why you are here. Not because you want to see the theater, but because you want recommendations for that other, better kind of theater. The dialogue could use a little patching up, but the drama is there. And you have nothing but time. All right. A few blocks away at the Watergate, follow people into the elevator and get off at the 3rd floor. The 4th apartment on the left, there is a girl, and she is falling in love for the first time, or just dancing on the edge of it. When she's alone, she sings all the time. And it's beautiful and sad and sweet. The dance routines she choreographs for herself while no one's watching, she's one of my favorites. One door down, there's an old man who is learning the banjo. It isn't going very well, but it's good for comic relief. Sometimes he just looks at the TV and doesn't turn it on, and it gets sad fast. Across the hall, there is a middle-aged couple whose lives are not going as they'd hoped. But when they drink, it's almost like an Albee play. If you don't mind being a little depressed when you leave. And one room over there, there's a guy with no luck. I mean, no luck at all, but it's very funny. Never saw a piece of toast land jam side up for as long as I have been watching. At the end of the hall, there's an old couple, 50 years, and they still love each other. And sometimes it's good. You don't want drama. Sometimes you just want to watch an old man make an old lady a tuna fish sandwich the way she likes it, and telling her she looks beautiful when she does the dishes. There's this one guy, and you know how sometimes people say my life should be a sitcom, and what they actually mean is my life is not interesting to anyone who isn't me, but please let me cling to this illusion. His life actually should be a sitcom. He has this one friend who, well, anyway, I don't want to ruin it for you, but his apartment is 425 P Street, and there are shows nightly. He gets a little freaked out. He keeps getting chills and feelings like he's being watched. But go see. Births, deaths, domestic disputes, there's enough to go around. If you like gore, you can go sit in a hospital. If you like that sort of high drama, you can sit there all day long, all year long. Some ghosts just like one particular building, and they'll squat there for generations, watching the whole cycle happening from moving in to birth to death and back again. That's not my speed. I like to channel surf. There is more than enough to do. D.C. is a good ghost town.
Our next piece is by Deb Sevigny, and she says, my piece, #appropriation, was inspired by the controversy surrounding Seattle and New York's productions of The Mikado because of actors in yellowface. As an adopted Korean American, I'm still working through all my thoughts and feelings about race, appropriation, and cultural exchange. This piece is a very fresh first attempt to enter that conversation through what I know best, costume design. I would ask that there's no photography or video of the piece beyond the simulcast because I don't want it to be taken out of context. I'm grateful to my actors who were willing to place themselves in a controversial position for the purposes of creating meaningful conversation. You can see Deb's upcoming work, which includes production design for Forum Theater's World Builders by Joanna Adams and directed by Amber Jackson, and costumes for Natsu Onoda Power's adaptation of War with the Newts. This is Deb Sevigny.
kind of man obedience I expect. I'm the Emperor of Japan.
And I'm his daughter-in-law elect. He'll marry his son, he's only got one, his daughter-in-law elect.
My morals have been declared particularly correct.
But they're nothing at all compared with those of his daughter-in-law elect. Bow, bow to his daughter-in-law elect.
Bow, bow to his daughter-in-law elect. In a fatherly kind of way, I govern each tribe and sect, all cheerfully on my sway.
Except his daughter-in-law elect, as tough as a bone with a will of her own, is his daughter.
Three little maids from school are we, what does a schoolgirl welcome me, filled to the brim with girlish glee. Three little maids from school, everything is a source of fun. Nobody's safe, for we care for none. Life is a joke that's just begun. Three little maids from school. Three little maids who all unwary come from the ladies' seminary, free from mischievous tutelary. Three little maids from school, three little maids from school. One little maid is a bright young yarn, two little maids in attendance come, three little maids is the total sum, three little maids from school. From three little maids take one away, two little maids remain and they won't have to wait very long, they say. Three little maids from school, three little maids from school, three little maids who all unwary come from a ladies' seminary, free from a genius tutelary. Three little maids from school, three little maids from school.
Annalisa Diaz's piece is entitled Servant of the Wind, and she says, quote, It is a work in progress. It was inspired by time I spent last year studying an ancient Indian martial art called Kalari. I'll be performing it as a finished piece as part of the 2016 Intersections Festival in February. I'm also producing, writing, and performing an original devised physical theater piece called One World More that reimagines Shakespeare's The Tempest using the lens of critical race theory to examine the erasure of history and the silencing of women's voices. This will take place at the Mead Theater Lab at Flashpoints in April 2016. Annalisa D.C.'s piece, Servant of the Wind.
One, this is for me, the whole teeming thing, and only me. See, I have this need to make everything I do about serving others, self-abnegation, a fall into nothingness. I don't actually think I can write a play without taking anyone else into account, purely my perspective. I don't matter, which I learned from my parents. I'm nothing, so give and give and give and give and give and give and give. And when it starts to hurt, the deep ache of overtired muscles stretched thin in repetitive use, say a prayer and continue. Enjoy your pain. It tells you you're alive. I learned that in India, that pain can mean awareness. Pain can be a vehicle, but you don't always know where it will take you. I was in Kerala studying Kalaripayatu, the word meaning creating the body in sacred space. The Kalari masters talk about making the whole body a great eye, listening, sensing, seeing reality with every fiber of the body, connecting to and participating in the creation of Shakti, meaning power or energy. Create the self. There is no such thing as loneliness here. Myself is not bound to this moment. It's open and connected to Shakti. And with Shakti, all things are possible. Even healing. It's hard to choose where the story starts, which narrative to select, because they all overlap. There's some idea, I think, in Bakhtinian philosophy that conceptualizes the self as a center of multiple and shifting identities. The self I am now is an amalgamation of possibilities, memories shaped by people, a mother, a sister, a father, shaped by their own memories, shaped by desires for power, for peace, for being seen, but mostly for love or forgiveness for continually fucking up. The I that I am is connected to all of these things. Five, Sitaram. Once, when I was riding in a taxi in New Delhi, the driver decided to give us a tour free of charge. We drove by a temple, and he said, "You want to hear about God? Brahma, Vishnu, Shiva. Generator, ordainer, destroyer. Brahma, generator of creation. Vishnu, ordainer of the universe. Shiva, destroyer of the world. Brahma, Vishnu, Shiva, G-O-D, God." He was pleased with himself for this. He said it as though he had tricked us into accepting some kind of hidden and specifically Indian wisdom about the true nature of the world. Another way of telling that story: a very long time ago, the wise king Dashrath ruled the city of Ayodhya in the north of India, high in the Himalayas. King Dashrath had 3 wives, Kausalya, Kaikeyi, and Sumitra. Just before the day that Kausalya's son Ram was to be crowned king, Kaikeyi demanded that Dashrath banish him to the forest and crown her son Bharat king instead. Due to unkept promises, Dashrath dejectedly did as she asked, and the next day announced with grief that Ram would be banished to the Dandaka forest for 14 years. The whole city was shocked. Ever the devoted son, Ram accepted this decision without question. "I have no choice. I must honor my father's word," he said. As he was preparing to leave, his loving wife, the Princess Sita, came to him. "I will go with you, Ram." "The forest is dark and full of unknown dangers. Stay safe at the palace, my love." "No, Ram, I cannot live without you." 2 names combined, melted into one. Sita Ram. Sita Ram. 2 forces of the universe constantly complementing each other, entwined, involved, devoted. Brahma Shakti, God of creation and destruction. When Sita and Ram left Ayodhya, the city wept at the disaster. The birds stopped singing and flowers refused to bloom. Within a few days, King Dashrath's heart broke, and he died. When young Bharat heard what his mother had done, he ran into the forest after his older brother and begged him to return to Ayodhya and take his place as king. Ram refused. "No, Bharat, I must keep our father's promise. If we give in a little bit here, a little bit there, soon there will be no honor left. Brother, I will never wear the crown. Give me your sandals. I will place them on the throne in your name. I will go back to Ayodhya as caretaker and sit at the foot of the throne until you return to us." For 13 years, Sita and Ram wandered deeper and deeper into the heart of the Dandaka forest. For 13 years, Sita and Ram walked farther and farther south toward the land of the evil king Ravan. They fought many demons in the forest, but always remained side by side, never separate, Sita and Ram. It was in a strange way a peaceful time for them, free from the world's cares and expectations. A cycle of creation and destruction with the body at center. Sita Ram. We make war and we learn to heal. 2 sides of a coin. Sita Ram. The body is a container for emptiness and fullness, sometimes both at once. "14. Enter the cycle." Growing up, I never learned about Sita, Ram, and Hanuman. My family never went to temple. The Ramayana was a bedtime story, like Aesop's fables or Grimm's fairy tales. They were all fabricated stories with a moral. I learned that India is full of chaos. The people there have 8 arms and bloody fangs instead of teeth. I have this vivid memory of Ravan's bloody mouth and an image of Jatayu, king of the vultures, with his broken and bloodied wing. I learned then that brokenness is the price of devotion. My parents didn't keep the complex beauty of my heritage from me intentionally. How do you teach a child that pain is part of living? I understand the impulse to protect. Violence, viscera, the things of the body, those are exotic, foreign. See, I'm a child of colonialism. Both my parents are Catholic. So the Ramayan was both foreign and deeply my own at once. The thing is, it's been some time since I was in Kerala studying Kalaripayatu. The daily practice is fading from my limbs. I can feel my muscles reverting to old forms. But Kalari is a tradition I long for. I spent 2 weeks in the South Indian heat studying something that I felt like I already knew. Some hidden thing, tucked away in the structures of my cells, released. My feet remembered the clay, my lungs remembered the smoke, my skin remembered the oils, my heart remembered the devotion to Shiva, Ganesha, Kali. I long for it now because the past feels separate from me, something violently ripped away and covered over, as though I had been deceived all along. The past feels like something slipping from my grasp. It feels distant. There's sadness there. I want it back.
Our final piece this evening is by Rachel Hynes, and she says, "Tale of a tiger was born from a vision. I had a vision that there was a girl who went down to the river to feed the tigers. What did she feed them? I asked myself. Oh, something not very important, but also something very important. What was it? I asked. She fed them bits of herself. Why would she do that? And thus began A Tale of the Tiger, trying to discover why a young girl would go down to the river and feed bits of herself to the tigers. I've always loved fairy tales, but as I grew older, they began to speak less and less about my experience. Their description of girls, of coming of age, of womanhood, had nothing to do with how I felt. I wanted to write a new fairy tale, one for young women who could relate to feeling rough around the edges, feeling alienated from other people, feeling that traditional fairy tales had left them high and dry. These girls have no castles in the air. They've learned to keep their paws firmly on the ground. In order to write the story, I had to tell the story. I told half-finished versions of it to people, and the story would develop every time I told it. I wrote the story by telling the story. Storytelling is something that my family did, that I grew up with, and I believe that storytelling is powerful. Telling your own story or hearing someone tell part of yours is like shaking a hand, meeting a long-lost sister. It is to be understood by someone else. This is a story for girls who turned into tigers.
I'm going to tell you a story. Once upon a time, there was a little girl who lived in the forest with her father.
The forest was a place of delight and danger. In some places, it was like a magical fairyland, all dark and soft and smelling of pine with the lights of the fireflies all around you. In other places, there were treacherous whirlpools that seemed to sing, and if they lured you in, your head would never break the surface again. There were sweet songbirds that sang to each other across the forest, and there were tigers.
Tigers are solitary creatures that require a great deal of space. They can run as fast as they need to, jump as high as the distance requires, and they say, if you ever come within 50 feet of one, don't expect to leave that place. Well, at least not alive. The girl had no mother. She had walked out into the forest one day and didn't come back. And because of this, the father grew cold with his daughter and did nothing but sit in front of the fire. Now, the little girl missed her mother too, but the father never spoke of her, only of how much he hated the forest. She longed to climb up on his lap and press her cheek against his the way she used to. But he was harsh with her, and so she loved him in the only way she knew how, which was to be a good girl and do the chores. Papa, I'm done. The little girl was lonely, but she had the forest, and the forest was her friend. I am. Tigers. The little girl had a fascination with the tigers and would sometimes catch them swimming in the river, where they would often outpace lighter and seemingly faster animals. But she longed to meet one up close. But whenever they saw her, they disappeared. Now the father grew daily impatient with his daughter. The constant singing, the banging of doors, the mud in the shoes from the trips to the forest. And on one day, when she was particularly happy, having found a bird's nest, she sang a little song as she went home. I am, and she woke her father up from a drunken stupor. And the father, in his thoughtless rage, decided she needed to be punished. She would be quiet, and she would not go to the forest. Oh, no, Papa, I'm sorry, Papa, I'll be quiet, so quiet. Oh, no, Papa, please don't put me in there. I have to go out. I have to go to the forest now! And he shut her into the cupboard. Let me out, Papa, let me out. But he didn't. He kept her there for hours. Let me out, Papa. Papa, please let me out. Please, Papa, I'll be good. Please, Papa. And on the third day, he thought it would deter his daughter from going to the forest, but it only spurred her desire. And children are resilient, so she kept her feelings inside and continued on. But she did not sing. She did not laugh. And she did not speak a word. But her desire to see the tigers only grew stronger until one day she discovered how to get them close. Every week she would go down to feed the tigers. Her father called her a clumsy fool and wondered why she was always hurting herself, but she wasn't hurting herself. She was simply feeding the tigers. She didn't know why they kept coming, but she knew that they had to be fed, and she knew her father could never know. So she went out only at night and carefully cleaned the mud from her shoes when she got home. 3 autumns passed, and then one day the tiger did what it had never done before. It began to follow her. Half thrilled, half terrified, she twisted a circuitous pathway through the forest, hoping it could not track her, but at every turn she could hear its breath. She stumbled through the darkness, finding her door latch, pushed her way in, and there was her father. She could barely register the look of surprise on his face as she rushed past up to the safety of her bedroom, but there at the window, one long white claw reached out and tap, tap, tap. The father started up the stairways, yelling about how he'd break her legs if he had to. The tiger's face appeared at the window. Tap, tap. There was no escape. The tiger salivated at the window. Tap, tap. He was almost there. Tap, 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 tap. The father pushed open the door. She took one breath in, stepped to the window, and the next morning, the girl awoke from a deep, deep sleep.
Thank you so much for being here, and I'd like to thank the artists, women of Welders, Deb Sevigny, Annalisa Diaz, Rachel Hynes, and Alexandra Petri. We hope that you enjoyed this work. We hope that you'll be as excited as we are to watch Welders 2.0 blossom. Thank you for being such a marvelous audience. Good night.